Welcome to this channel. Here we talk about African culture and history, travel and lifestyle. Today we're going to talk about the Dogon tribe. The Dogon are an ethnic group indigenous to the Central Plateau region of Mali in West Africa, southern of the Niger bed, near the city of Badlagara and in Burkina Faso. Their population ranges between 400,000 to 800,000 people. They speak the Dogon languages, which are considered to constitute an independent branch of the Niger-Congo language family, which means that they are not closely related to any other languages. The Dogon are best known for their religious traditions, their mask dances, wooden sculpture, and their architecture. Since the 20th century, there have been significant changes in the social organization, material culture, and beliefs of the Dogon, in part because Dogon country is one of the Mali's major tourist attractions. Each district of the Dogon people has a Hogon, who is a spiritual leader, and there is a supreme Hogon for the whole country. In his dress and behavior, the Hogon symbolizes the Dogon myth of creation, to which the Dogon relate much of their social organization and culture. Their metaphysical system, which categorizes physical objects, personifies good and evil, and defines the spiritual principles of the Dogon personality, is more abstract than that of the most other African people. Dogon religious life is hated every 60 years by a ceremony called the Sigwe, which occurs when the star Sirius appears between two mountain peaks. Before the ceremony, young men go into seclusion for 3 months, during which they talk in a secret language, and the general ceremony rests on the belief that some 3,000 years ago, amphibious beings from Sirius visited the Dogon. Fewer than half of the Dogons are Muslims and fewer still are Christians. Most practice traditional religion. In their religious beliefs, the Dogon highest in the order of supernatural beings is Ama, the supreme creator god, the master of life and death, a benevolent albeit impersonal being who prevails over all, sees all, and knows it all. He is responsible for the creation of 3 other subordinate beings, the worship of which is the basis of several totemic cults. They are Nomo, the son of Ama, generally considered a water spirit, Lebe, the incarnation of the earth and its fertilizing properties, and Yorugu, the mythical representative of fallen man. The Dogon also believe in various malevolent and benevolent spirits who populate the bush, trees, and inhabited places. Although the Dogon recognize the creator god, Ama, as a supreme being and address prayers and sacrifices to him, the core set of beliefs and practices focuses on ancestor worship. This is manifested through the cult of the mask, the Lebe cult, the Binu cult, and the more general cult of the ancestors associated with the Gina. The spread of Islam throughout Africa has brought about some degree of change in the basic religious orientation of the Dogon. Some tenets of Islam have been accepted, others rejected. In many cases, the new elements are blended with those of the traditional religion. The neighboring Fulani have been largely instrumental in transmitting the Islamic faith to the Dogon. About 10% of the Dogon are Christians. In addition to the priests and the religious functionaries of the various cults, there are other seers or visionaries called the Kumugu and diviners. Other specialists are the healers or herbalists who treat the sick, and sorcerers, Dunune, who cast spells. The principal ceremonies of the Dogon center around agriculture and death. The great annual feast of the sowing, called the Bulu, begins in April or May, prior to the beginning of the rainy season in all the villages of the region. In these ceremonies, offerings of millet from the Ogon's fields in conjunction with sacrifices by the Binu priest or Binukedine on the Lebe altar of the ancestors impart to the seed the spiritual essence or nyama that will contribute toward the community's assurance of an abundant harvest. The funerary ceremonies of the Dogon consist of 2 parts. The initial rites, which take place immediately following death and continue for about a week, and the more elaborate Dharma rites that terminate the mourning period of an intermediate period of time. All the rites and ceremonies involved in varying degrees of complexity, offerings and sacrifices, mock battles, and the prominent display of the carved mask, generally through their use in the elaborate dances of the masked society. The degree of complexity of the ceremonies depends upon the age and status of the deceased male. Funerals for women, who are generally excluded from our membership, are simple, with little, if any, ceremonies. Once in every 60 years, roughly within a Dogon's lifespan, a major Sigi or Sigu ceremony takes place. The ceremony originally honored the dead ancestors but is now for the living. It serves to halt the gradual cultural decline in Dogon society and to cleanse the community of its sins and bad feelings. The series of dances, which constitute a good part of the Sigi, last for 7 years. One village after another takes its turn to entertain its neighbors with feasting, drinking, and displays of wealth. At this time, new masks are carved and dedicated to the ancestors. The Dogon's forms of medicine is really interesting. The Dogon attribute illness to a variety of causes, such as the weakening of the vital life force, which is a nyama, the creation of a state of impurity in the individual through the influences of evil spirits, violation of a taboo or prohibition, and sorcery. There are 12 categories of disease considered treatable, each with its own specific healer who has special knowledge of the specific plant that will bring about a cure. Where diseases are considered to be supernaturally based on or the result of sorcery, a healer diviner is called in who determines the cause of the disease through divination, then offers sacrifices, magical charms, and incarnations to bring about a cure. For the Dogon, death is conceived as the separation from the body of the two parts that make up the personality, which is the nyama or vital life force and the kikinu se or the soul. Given the centrality of the ancestor worship in Dogon society, practices associated with death, namely the initial funerary rites and the dharma or the final lifting of mourning, achieve great importance in ceremonial life. Until the dharma is completed, the soul of the deceased wanders on the southern outskirts of the village, sometimes in the bush or around its former dwelling place. After completion of the dharma, the soul departs from the world of the living and goes to the great god Amma. The souls of the just reach paradise at the yen of the house of God called the Amma Ginu, where they live an existence analogous to that which they lived on earth. The Dogon are strongly oriented towards harmony, which is reflected in many of their rituals. For instance, in one of their most important rituals, the women praise the men thank the women. The young express appreciation for the old, and the old recognize the contributions of the young. Another example is the custom of elaborate greetings when one Dogon meets another. This custom is repeated over and over throughout a Dogon village or day. During a greeting ritual, the person who has entered the contact answers a series of questions about his or her whole family from the person who was already there. The answer is Sewa, which means that everything is fine. Then the Dogon who has entered the contact repeats the ritual, asking the resident how his or her whole family is. Because the word Sewa is so commonly repeated throughout a Dogon village, neighboring peoples have dubbed the Dogon the Sewa people. And as I conclude, I want to talk about the Dogon art, which consists primarily of sculptures. Dogon art revolves around religious values, ideas, and freedoms. Dogon sculptures are not made to be seen publicly and are common hidden from the public eye within the houses of families, sanctuaries, or kept within the Dogon. The importance of secrecy is due to the symbolic meaning behind the pieces and the process by which they are made. Things found throughout Dogon sculpture consist of figures with raised arms, superimposed beaded figures, horsemen, stools with caryatids, women with children, figures covering their faces, women grinding pearl millets, women bearing vessels on their heads, donkeys bearing cups, musicians, dogs, quadruple-shaped troughs or benches, figures bending from the waist, mirror images, aproned figures, and standing figures. The Dogon is such an interesting culture, their language, their diversity, and everything. Their art, it's so beautiful, and I would like to experience it one-on-one. I especially love their connection with their ancestors, because we are a direct expression of our ancestors. However, I'm not a fan of how the funerals for the females are done, because women, just like the soil we step on, are the mother nature, and they are the gate watchers of the people that step into this world. For everyone to come into this world, they must come from a woman. So, what do you think? Thank you so much for watching to this end. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like and share. Let's meet in the next video.